It's the most difficult sound of them all. With 8 ways to say it, your tongue placement changing with sounds that are near. It's the most difficult sound of them all. It's the trickiest sound of them all. With SLPs groaning when they see it appear on their kids' IEPs. It's the trickiest sound of them all. They can't say it in Boston. Ask my mom, she has lost it. In Spanish, it trills just for show. It seems scary to train it if your kid can't quite say it, but let's give it a try. Here we go. It's the most difficult sound of them all. With 8 ways to say it and your tongue placement changing with sounds that are near. It's the most difficult sound of them all. Hello, everybody. It is Rebecca Robbins here from Mindshaper SLP with part 16 of our sound series, where we are talking all about the most difficult sound of them all. Can you guess what it is? It is R. It is the most challenging sound probably of them all. Which is definitely why it is in the advanced consonant sound group of sounds in the Nonverbal No More program. It is one of the latest sounds to develop in typically developing speech. And in fact, we don't even target it or put a child on our caseload who's having a hard time with this sound until they're like 7 or 8 years old. We might be monitoring their ability to say this sound, but if R is the only thing that they are having difficulty saying, we probably don't start treating it until at least 2nd grade or so, because it just develops that much later because it's that difficult. So before I get too much further, I want to just let you know to stay tuned to the end of the video when I have a special announcement that I'm going to make. I'm going to make you wait till the end, and let's just dive right in and talk about this sound. Now, I'm really hoping that I am in fact live, because I can't actually see my video, and usually I can, but I do see the time going. So I'm going to just go ahead and barrel ahead and just assume that you can see me. If anyone is watching, if you can just give me a quick in the chats telling me, yes, I can see you, Rebecca, that would be great. So in the Nonverbal No More program, as you know, if you've been watching my sound series videos, all of our sounds have nicknames because it's part of using a multi-sensory approach to teaching kids to talk. And so giving each of the sounds as a nickname is just an additional prompt that we use. And the R sound is called the pirate sound, because when we act like a pirate, we say, "Arr, walk the plank, matey." So that's why we call it the pirate sound in Nonverbal No More. And the cue that I use for it is I literally just use the ASL letter R, sign for R, and I push it out. So the kids can see what my lips are doing, and I just push the R out. So I actually twist it and push it out. And because once a child is actually at the point where they're working on the sound, then they are probably talking quite a bit at this point. So this hand cue is typically enough for me to use with the child. So one of the reasons that the R sound is so difficult is because it actually isn't just one sound. It actually needs to be trained and taught as 8 different sounds. That's right, 8 different sounds. So I'm going to break down what the 8 different sounds are for you right now. There's the pre-vocalic R. So that's like in the word read, write, reading. So that's R in the beginning of words. That is its own sound in and of itself. And then we have the R sound, like car, bar, park your car in the Harvard yard. This is the R that gives our, most of my family that I'm related to comes from Massachusetts. So that when the iconic Boston accent, this is the R that they tend to turn into an ah sound instead of an R. There's air, as in hair, pear, tear. That's its own R sound. Ear, as in ear, hear, peer. There's So when we put that ER ending on words like worker, barber, that sound is its own in and of itself. There's ire, like fire, tire, hire. And then there's or, like for, or, tore, pour. Those are all different R sounds that need to be trained separately from each other. So in traditional articulation therapy, we are taught as speech language pathologists that you take an individual sound and there's a hierarchy of how you approach teaching it. You start with it in isolation, and then you put it into syllables, and then you put it into words, and then into phrases, and then sentences, and then connected speech. And that's all for just one word position, right? So we would take, let's say if we're working on the sound, right? We would start with the S in the beginning of words. We'd start in isolation, in the beginning of a syllable, in the beginning of a word, in the beginning of a word inside a phrase, in the beginning of the word inside a sentence. And then when the child can do that, we move on to the final position of that sound. So why this is important when we're talking about the R sound is that we have to, as SLPs, so any newbie SLPs out there that haven't quite worked on the R sound, listen up, this is how you do it. You really have to treat each one of those R's as a separate sound and follow that treatment hierarchy for each individual R sound. But don't get discouraged, because the cool thing about R is that when you start to teach it, so you just pick one of the R sounds, let's say we're going to just train the air sound with a child. As the child starts to be able to get better and better at saying the air sound, you'll find that some of the other R's will just naturally fix themselves on their own. So the work that you do on the one R does tend to generalize towards the other R's. So you may not have to necessarily train each one of those different R's with the same intensity as you had to the first R. And then aside from, so we have the pre-vocalic R, so that's the R in the beginning of the words, and then all of what the vocalic R's, which are the list that I just went down. So that's an R that is colored by a vowel. That's why they're called a vocalic R. So they're colored by the vowel that they are next to, which is why in my song I said 8 ways to say it, and your tongue placement changing with the sounds that are near. So if you're saying ear, then your tongue is in a different place to say R than when you say or. And if you just say ear, or, you can feel inside your mouth how your tongue changes and the shape of your mouth changes for each of those R's. But aside from all of those R's, there's also R blends. So that's words like green, brown, tree, growl. So you have those initial R blends, but then you also have R blends like RL, world, pearl, which are really tricky because now you've got the R and the L together. So those certainly will come last if you're addressing them. And what I highly suggest, if you're a speech language pathologist and you have a student on your caseload that is working on R, I really highly suggest looking into purchasing the Entire World of R program as a therapy material. It is really, really great therapy material, and it's what I use when I treat R's. And you what you want to do is you need to look at all of the R's when you're assessing where to start. And there's most likely a context in which your child or your student will be able to say an R correctly. And you don't know that until you kind of do like an assessment or look at how their ability to say the R in all the different word positions and different types of words using all the different types of R's. And you want to start with the R that your child or your student is already having some success with. And that's the best place to start. So I find that the entire world of R has this whole screening protocol that is really helpful to find that information out. And then the other reason why R is really tricky, aside from the fact that there's so many, is when we're talking about accents. Most accents, so as you guys may or may not know that I'm also an actress, but when you're talking about having to change your voice to have a certain accent, a lot of accents happen in the vowels and the R's. So like the Boston accent, and just a really like funny story for you guys. My mom is probably gonna kill me right now. So if you hadn't guessed it from the song, that my mother was raised in Massachusetts, and so she still, despite the fact that she hasn't lived there in like a really, really long time, like over 40 years, she still has that Massachusetts accent. And so growing up, I used to think that a part in the hair was a pot in the hair because that's how she would say it to me. So accents, so like a Boston accent or an accent from Massachusetts is R shows up. And okay, I lost my train of thought after telling that story about my mother. So that's another tricky part of the R sound as well. And if a child has a particular dialect that they come from, we wouldn't fix that R because that's appropriate for where they are geographically from. So let's talk about some tips to prompt the R sound. If you're working on the R sound, and let's talk about the vocalic R, because those tend to be more challenging than the pre-vocalic R, which is the R in the beginning of the words. So what I find is really helpful is starting with the vowel first. And I use my vowel arm motions and then pair it with the R. So let's say, for instance, my student is working on the OR sound. That is a combination of OR. So if you pull those vocalic R's apart, you can hear the vowel and the sound together. It's just when we say them, it's really one mouth position that happens when we say it. So OR is OR. So if we cue the child to start with the O, and that's what I say to them, start with the O, or. So if we're saying the word for instance, ready? Start with the O, for. Yeah, for. Also, when you're doing those vocalic R's, in my experience, the final position tends to be a little bit harder than the initial position. So definitely start by targeting in the initial position first. But if you're past that with your student and you're working in the final position, you can do a little trick. So let's say your child can say red, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to pair. So let's say we're working on the final OR, and you've got for, and your child's saying faux. And I'm going to talk about common substitutions that happen in a minute. But let's just say your child is working on or, and they say faux instead of for, okay? So, but they can say red. So what I will do as a teacher is to get them to be able to say it in the ending position, I'll say, tell me for red, for red. So basically, what happens is I am getting them to say the R at the end of for by moving directly into another word that has the R sound. So they say forehead, forehead. Okay, great. Now this time we're going to whisper the word red. Forehead, forehead, forehead. Good. Now this time we're gonna just mouth the word red. Four, four, four. Nice. Good job. Do you feel how you're saying the sound? Now this time we're just gonna think about the word red and we're not gonna move our mouth and say it. Four, four. That's it. You said four. So that is a really great technique to try with your students if you're working on the R sound. So, so you can always start, if you're working on the vocalic R, by cueing the vowel first. And just a reminder of what the vowel cues are. So this is O. So for or, you would start with the O. Or. For ear, you would start with the E. Ear, ear. And you would say that to your child. Start with the E, ear. So if you're a parent now and your child is working with a speech pathologist on their R sound, ask your SLP which R are they working on right now. And then these are some cues you can use with your child when they're at home. If they're working on the ear sound and you hear them say like fia instead of fear, right? So it might sound like fia instead of fear. You're gonna say, oh, let's try that again. Let's start with the E, fear, and then help them say it that way. So or, it starts with the O. Ear starts with the E. Air starts with the A. Air. Air. And R starts with the A. R. R. And then let's see here. We got R. Air I did. Ear. Starts with an you can do. And ire starts with the I. So it'd be ire. So have them start with the vowel and then move into the R and see how that goes. So some common substitutions that we hear for the R is when it's in the initial position. Oftentimes we have kids that might sound like Elmer Fudd, Wascally Webbit, and they're using the Wha sound for the sound. So we use this to our advantage for our kids that aren't quite at the level yet where they're going to be saying R, and they're still working on even just being able to produce sounds at all or produce speech at all. We are going to train them to say the Wha sound for the initial R. So if you want your child to say red, you're going to prompt them to say wed. And that's a perfectly appropriate approximation for the word red. Now, when the R sound is in the middle or the end of the word, that's when it tends to be one of these vocalic R's. That's when you have to listen for which vowel goes with that R, and you're going to cue the child to say the word approximation with just the vowel and leave the R off. So if we're working on the word for, you would just prompt them to say faux, if they're not there yet. And if they're not even at the F yet, it would be po, would be a good substitution for the number 4. We could say po instead if they're still working in just those early developing consonant sounds. The word ear, just have them say e-ya. You can even have them say e-ya and get them to say that sound in place of the Fire would be fi, or just fi. Let's see. Hair would be hey, or just hey as a substitution for hair. Let's see, I did or, ire, ear, air. There's so many. I have to use my list here to keep myself on track. I really hope this is being recorded. The timer is going, but I see no video of myself. Okay, and yes, so we're going to use the wha for the initial R sound, and then you'll use the vowel for a middle or final vocalic R that might occur. Now, these are all things that we cover in Nonverbal No More. In fact, in Module 7, Go Rogue, that whole module is devoted to teaching you how to simplify words that have sounds your child cannot say yet and turn them into approximations that are within your child's ability. We have an entire module on that. So you might need to watch this particular video a bunch of times to really kind of wrap your brain around it, because it's that hard. But that's why we devote an entire module, and you get actual printable cheat sheets and reference sheets, so that all you have to do is you hang them up in your speech corner, because I also teach you in Nonverbal No More how to create a speech corner. So you can hang them up in your speech corner, and you have an easy to look at reference to look at. I also have it so that you can just save the picture on your phone, so when you're out and about you can look at the photo album on your phone for quick reference. So this is tricky stuff, but it's important, because the more we can simplify these more difficult words and these more difficult sounds for our children who really are just mastering their ability to talk and produce sounds, the more vocabulary we unlock for them, and the more they are able to express themselves, and the more they are able to say. And as they are able to say more and more things, and they realize they can have more and more of an impact on their environment with what they're saying, then the more motivated they will be to continue to talk. So this is really, really important stuff. That's why I devote an entire module on it in Nonverbal No More. If you are interested in that program, please, enrollment is open. We are open, ready for business, and the membership is going. I did a live Q&A call yesterday for my members, and go to bit.ly/nonverbal no more membership. And you can get all the information on how you can get in there to help your child talk today. But before I move on to my next announcement, I just want to talk about some fun activities that I do with my students when I'm working on the R sound. So as with any articulation activity, repetition is key. We need lots and lots and lots of practice saying the sound over and over and over again, because once the child is able to learn how to get their mouth in the position to make the sound, so they're what we call stimulable, able to say the sound in isolation, then a lot of the articulation work that's happening is really unlearning the bad habit. And that's why it takes a lot of concerted effort on the part of the child, and a lot of practice and repetition and drill. Because like, if you think about it, if we want to change the way that we say something, when we speak, we're not consciously thinking about how we say everything that we're saying and how we form every word, unless we like hit a stumble or a roadblock or something like I just did. Then we actually stop, slow down, and think about how we're saying it. But when we're asking a child to fix a sound like R that's in so many words, that's a lot of mental effort that they would have to put in to be paying conscious attention to how they're saying every single thing that comes out of their mouth. And let's face it, they're kids, they're not really doing that. But so we need to come up with activities that contrive that natural speech situation in the therapy room, so that, or in your home practice, so that when your child is doing conversational spontaneous speech, it's easier for them to just flow out with the sound. So one of the ways that I like to do this is with something called the Storybook Game. So I'm going to just show you a little example. So I have my entire world of R. I'm not affiliate for this company or anything, but I really love their products. But I have my entire world of R pictures here. I hope you can see them. So what we would do is, let's pretend like this is the whole stack of cards. And so one person would start and go, once upon a time, I saw a dinosaur on the street. And then every time the child says the R, they have to say their good R. And then the next person's turn. Once upon a time, I saw a dinosaur on the street, and he had an oriole on his head. And now the next person goes, and they start back at the beginning. Once upon a time, I saw a dinosaur in the street, and he had an oriole on his head, and they were walking to the bookstore. And now the next person takes their turn. Once upon a time, I saw a dinosaur in the street, and he had an oriole on his head, and they were walking to the bookstore to buy a cork. And it can be anything. The story doesn't necessarily have to be truthful or make sense. It can be silly. That is half the fun of the game for the kids, is being silly. But with having to start over and over and over again from the beginning and saying the same story over and over and over again, you're getting lots of repetition in there and lots of times that they're saying the same words over and over and over again in connected speech. It's a great game. So that's something you can do. You could do it with a page of pictures. You can do it with a stack of articulation cards. That would be a great carryover activity for you to play with your kids at home. If they're working on R and speech, ask your child's SLP to send home a sheet of words, and you can play the storybook game. Might be like a fun thing to do, like before you go to bed, as part of like the bedtime routine, maybe. It doesn't have to take very long, or maybe even like if you're on a road trip or something, that could be something that you try. And then if you have a child that is maybe younger and is working on just saying the in isolation, that game Pop-Up Pirate, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's an awesome game. It's so simple, but the kids love it. It's just a barrel that has a pirate that you push down, and then these little swords that you stick in the slots. And when you put a sword in a certain slot, the pirate pops up, and it's like, it pops up pretty high. It's gonna be a little startling. So you can place a game like that, and each time your child has to put the sword in, they go "Arr" like a pirate, "Arr" like a pirate, "Arr" like a pirate. So that's another fun activity you can try. So now for my special announcement is, if you are loving these sound series videos, which I hope you are, I have absolutely adored making them. I've been having so much fun, especially with the music in the beginning. I have decided to create some sound series bundles for you. So we're going to have 3 versions: the early sounds, later sounds, and advanced sounds. You can buy each package individually or get a bundled price to get all 3. They're going to be released very soon. So not only will you get all of the sound series videos together, but you'll also get the sound picture cards that I talk about from Nonverbal No More that have all of these fun, cute pictures and the nicknames. You will get videos of me demonstrating how to do the hand cues. You'll get some data sheets so that you can go ahead and start working with your child and keep track of their progress with just print and go data sheets. And I might throw a few other things in there. So it's kind of like a mini taste of Nonverbal No More, but at a much reduced price. And you can really kind of just get your hands on one of these packages and give it a shot. And I'm really excited about this, and they will be coming soon. So be on the lookout for my sound series bundles that will be coming soon. And whew, that was a long one today, and I'm not surprised because R is very difficult. Please ask any questions you have in the comments below, and let me know how I can support you and your child in working on the R sound. And if you're interested in Nonverbal No More, visit bit.ly/nonverbalnomore membership. I'd love to have you, and I'd be honored to guide you on your journey to help your child to talk. Bye.